Hello there, everyone. My name's Sura. I'm a meditation coach, and I'm so excited to have Kristina with us today. She's the co-founder of Mind Valley.
Hi,
And
Sura.
hello there. It's so lovely to see you. And Kristina, could you start with just a few minutes of introducing yourself and who you are?
Okay. Hi, everyone. So yes, as Sura said, I am a co-founder of Mind Valley, and this is my, let's say, most prominent introduction, probably, because this is the company which we started with my husband 15 years ago, and Mind Valley is one of the probably leading institutions of education, if I can say so. We are trying to fill the gaps that the formal education has left in our knowledge of how to live life happily and fulfilled and extraordinarily. So we are bringing the knowledge that people need about generally living fulfilling lives to the people. So that's one side of it. But in addition to that, I'm also a woman. And this year it sounds a little bit with more substance than it would have been all the previous years. And I'm an author and a teacher. Recently, I'm a mother of 2 children, and on top of that, I'm a philanthropist, I'm an artist, I play music, I do a lot of things. So I'm a multifaceted human being. So that's a short introduction.
Oh, that sounds absolutely lovely. And what's your passion project right now? What are you most focused on or passionate about just now at this moment?
So I think my realization of last year has been that you truly can't choose to be or not to be yourself. Unfortunately, most of the people are a little bit like onions with a lot of layers over our true substance. So my passion right now is actually conveying the message and actually the skills and the knowledge that people need to start peeling off those onion peels and, and trying to see the core, the essence of what people are truly. And yeah, I believe that this is something which we need and something which really brings you to transformation and to fulfillment.
I think we feel safe with those layers. They make us feel safe because we've been punished for being who we are. And so we've learned to put up those walls and those personas. And I feel like this is such a prominent thing right now is teaching and showing people to be their true self, their authentic self in their life and their work and in all aspects of their life, even with our family, our parents. And I think that that fear of persecution or diminishment for coming out as who we are and our true self, I think that's what really holds us back. And especially, I know you talk about women and female leadership. So I'm curious to talk about this with you because I think women especially, we've learned to silence ourselves. We've learned to be that good girl that kind of sits within a box and in our place. And so what do we do to break out of that? Like, how do we really help and encourage people to, come out as their true authentic self and give them the tools to access that place?
Well, I would say that why it's happening, I call it the paradox of the masks, because we have this evolutionary need to belong, and we are afraid to be abandoned or not to be liked or to be, tossed out of the tribe. So it is our evolutionary trait. So of course, the feeling that I'm not going to be accepted, that I'm going to be rejected is so deep and intense because through evolution, it was literally the question of life and death. That's why sometimes when we like someone, we are so afraid of that rejection as if we are about to die. When in reality, our common sense lets us know that, of course, you're not going to die just because somebody says no to you. But because of that fear, we put on the masks because we worry that if people see us the way we are, they would not accept us. And you just mentioned the women try to fit the box. The thing is that the way we feel shame is actually exactly the same for men and women. But the trigger for shame for women is mostly their perfectionism. So we have the picture of what a perfect woman is. She's a good mom, she is gorgeous as a woman, she is actually, you know, visionary and ambitious, and she accomplishes things. So we have to be superwoman working 2 shifts. And if we don't fit that perfect picture, we feel shame. And the emotion of shame is one of the lowest emotions that can ever exist. It's one of the most destructive emotions. For men, the picture is actually similar. The only thing is that they feel shame if they don't look strong. So for them, it's weakness. For us, for women, it's imperfection. For women, it's weakness, but essentially it's the same if we don't fit a certain picture. So because our own perception of ourselves doesn't fit usually the picture of perfectionism, because we have really high bar for ourselves. We don't dare to show up as what we are. We have to hide behind the mask. We have to put on a better side. So this is a natural, it's actually the question of life and death for us. Very often we're so scared of showing up as we are, because that means rejection and that means death. But why I say it's a paradox, there's this beautiful TED speaker and psychologist, I like to refer to her, Brené Brown. And she has been researching people who have a very strong sense of connection with their loved ones. And she said that there are 3 things that make these people feel connected. And the thing number 1 is that they believe that they deserve to be loved the way they are. They don't have to deserve love. In fact, they are lovable, and they deserve love the way they are. The second thing is that they have the courage, not to have the courage, they actually dare to show up as their true selves, so without the masks. And the third one is the courage, which is actually having the courage to be vulnerable. And that means showing up without knowing what the reaction of the world will be. So the paradox is that we put on the masks to be liked, but research shows that to be liked, we shouldn't have the masks. So that's the premise of this whole thing. But how do we do that? It starts with a few skills, in my opinion. I'll just mention them. I will not go deep into that for now. So the thing number 1 is awareness and consciousness. So living life with consciousness, because we do a lot of things on autopilot, and masks and roles and the walls. This is pretty much from the category of autopilot. It's actually quite understandable, because emotions often run on autopilot, and oftentimes the mask is actually a reaction to a certain situation. The other skill is definitely, I call it open dialogue. It's a whole methodology taught by one of our teachers in Mind Valley, but I really love the philosophy behind it. So it's honesty and sincerity, and the ability to actually communicate yourself, communicate what you are and what you want with the outside world and with yourself. And then probably the courage to actually go on with that. And there are other skills which we'll need, like, you know, dealing with the negative emotions, because that will come out in the process. And so the 4 things, the habit of consciousness, the open dialogue, the courage, and then the ability, the knowledge to deal with the negative emotions, which will come along the way.
I mean, I feel that if we don't have permission to be ourselves, that it causes us stress and it causes us distress. And we feel that it's more on a subtle level, an unconscious level. And especially for leaders of organizations, if they're not connected to themselves and they feel the need to put on this armor of strength and carry all the responsibility and look like they know the answers, if you're still carrying that level of stress or inauthenticity, I think it weighs on the whole organization. I think your team members feel it, and it causes this level of dissonance on some level. And I think there's so much power and even the potential for release of stress when a leader comes out and chooses to be vulnerable.
When it comes to the signs of you not being actually true with yourself, stress is definitely there, because we do feel stress. What I've noticed in my own experience is sign number 1 is that you are starting to lose the fuse and the motivation. You kind of do the right thing. It's more like the perfectionist complex, or when you do everything right, you have all the achievements, and your life or career or work seems like it's by the book, yet something is missing, yet there is not enough fire. So this is not sign number 1, that you are not actually in touch with yourself. And another telltale sign is when you feel the feelings, you think the thoughts which you think are wrong. So you would feel something and think, oh no, but I shouldn't be feeling like that. Like you've accomplished a work, let's say project or goal, something that the whole team has been striving for, but you don't feel the excitement that you thought you would feel or the satisfaction. And you're thinking to yourself, but I shouldn't be feeling like that. We all put so much work. So the moment when you start telling yourself, I shouldn't be feeling that, this is the wrong emotion, this is the wrong thought, this is another really strong sign that you're not seeing what you truly are clearly. You are compromising something, and you're playing someone else's scenario, you're playing the role that people expect from you, but not what is truly important to you. And I agree, the company would suffer a lot, but so would suffer any relationships, be it your children or your spouse or your friends, because truly we can only be useful to the world if we are happy, and we can't be happy and fulfilled if we are not in touch with what we are.
Exactly. I mean, I think it'll be so hard to make an impact when we're not coming from that place of joy and true passion. And I think that's what we get disconnected from, is that deep, deep inner feeling and being connected to our emotions, and having it all be connected and aligned within ourselves and being able to express that in a way. Because I feel too that it's impossible to feel stress and love at the same time, or stress and joy. You know, if you're feeling stress, it becomes instrumentally or incrementally more difficult to express your love, because stress kind of shuts us down, and it makes us hard, and it puts us on a much lower vibration, like feeling the negative emotions like shame. And so if we're able to get in touch with those deeper feelings and connect with them and not make them wrong, which I think, I mean, Kristina, what do you feel about that? I think there are certain cultures and places where we're not really allowed to connect to those deeper feelings, and they get really stuffed down. And we don't even, there's sometimes people don't even know what they're feeling about it, because that conditioning is so strong in their mind about what they should be doing. They're not even, that connection isn't happening.
Well, the truth is that it's not, well, some cultures do suppress it more, obviously. But the problem is not even that. Like we teach our kids to suppress their emotions. When the kid is upset, we'll say, stop crying, pull yourself together, it's all fine. We dismiss other people's emotions from a very early age. So of course the children do not learn the healthier approach to how to deal with emotions. And I would say that in school we also are not taught properly how to deal with emotions. I'll refer again to Brené Brown because I like her, although in Emotions there's another beautiful author that I should talk about. But Brené Brown says that children, they're born hardwired for suffering. So as children, we are born hardwired for suffering. And that's not surprising, because a lot of primary emotions are actually unpleasant, or the emotions which we want to feel less of. And the only primary emotion which everybody wants to feel a lot of is joy. But a lot of them are not joy. So we are hardwired for suffering. But what happens? Parents have this desire to protect their children from pain. So whenever our children feel pain, we either dismiss it, or we try to distract them into something else, or we try to solve their problems for them. So just a simple example from my own life. And, I know that business people will still relate, because it's super easy to relate to, everyday life situations. So I walked into my children's bedroom, and I saw that my 11-year-old son was crying. And I asked him what was going on, and he said he had forgotten to do some homework, which was due the next day, and it was late, so he couldn't catch up anymore. And other kids dependent on that. So I understand that for us, grown-up people, it seems like not a big deal. But for a child of 11 years, it's a huge thing, because it's fear, it's humiliation, it's uncertainty, it's something which they do not come across very often. So my initial reaction was, oh, don't worry, go to sleep. I'll call the teacher and I'll explain. We just came from a trip. You didn't have a time, an opportunity. I'll deal with that. But then I realized that if I do that, I'm going to solve the problem for my child, whereas my child has to go through his own experience. So the best thing as a mother that I can do is actually give him some kind of support in dealing with this negative experience the best way I could help him to deal with it, but still face the consequences of what had happened. So we had a conversation. He went to school the next day, still scared, still stressed. He came back. Apparently everything got resolved. Everything was okay, obviously. But that's that's a very common situation that we have, in which our reaction is, let me help you. You're my loved person. I'm going to help you not feel the pain. I'm going to solve your problem. I'm going to jump into that. And it's not just about children. It's, let's say, our parents who are having a problem, or our friends. We want to go and help them. And sometimes when we keep on doing that, the people are getting the same experience over and over again, because they're supposed to learn something. So why am I talking about that? Is that because we do that, our children don't even know how to deal with fear, with anger, with disappointment, with humiliation. They just don't, because we try to protect them from those emotions rather than helping them to deal with those emotions. We try to cut them off, to the point where we grow up into our grown-up form, believing that it is possible to live your life in eternal love, bliss, and joy, and be zen and never react to anything, to the point that there were books on the shelves saying, you know, screw emotions. And I'm paraphrasing, the names are much worse. Screw emotions, screw love, screw friendship, the subtle art of being, I'm not sure if that word is allowed in your air, but you know, the subtle art of being unfuckable. That is a real book. People actually want to feel nothing. They come to this life wanting to feel nothing. The thing is that if you want to suppress your painful emotions, it doesn't work like that. Emotions are suppressed entirely. So if you suppress pain, you suppress pleasure. You suppress anger, you suppress love. You suppress sadness, you suppress joy to the same degree. So if you want to have those positive emotions, but I actually don't like calling emotions positive and negative, but if you want to have the emotions you want more of,
The range. It's the range of emotion.
Yes, you have to learn to deal with those emotions you want to have less of. And there is the whole, I lived until 40 until I realized that there's a whole wealth of knowledge how to deal with that and how to get the best out of that and how to stop being afraid of that, because that's why we came on this planet Earth, to experience life and not to be semi-dead before we die.
Absolutely. I mean, wow, this is really touching. I think the crux of what much of humanity's suffering is going through is the need for emotional healing and development, and expressing ourselves, being able to be in touch with their emotions, having the safety to be in touch with them. And I think emotions are energy in motion, and we can receive so much information from our emotions. They're telling us something, constantly speaking to us. And something that I feel passionate about is, especially with meditation and the practice of meditation, because I think too often in meditation and spiritual communities, there's almost this bypassing of the emotions, and it's about transcending your emotions or feel your emotions so you can get to another place, to get to a better place. And there's such an emphasis on the positive emotion that you're cultivating, that there isn't this room to really go deep into the negative emotion. And if you see the violence and the war and the fragmentation of our human species, so much of that comes from also men not being able to connect with their emotions, or in women too. It's like that lack of permission and the lack of resource to go deep into our emotions, and then have that ability to express our fears, the vulnerability, to be ourselves without getting bullied at school and being punished for who we are. So I just think that it's so important that we have this space to talk about negative emotions, and or the negative, the darker emotions.
You know, I want to quote Ken Wilber here, because he says that in our pursuit, and I'm of course paraphrasing, it's not a quote directly, but we are so obsessed with the light, the joy, what we call positive, what we call good, that we are forgetting one simple truth, that everything is from one source. So the same way the light is from that source, the darkness is from that source. So if we look at it from that point of view, we shouldn't judge really what is going on in terms of, how we feel. And I'm generally not in favor of judging emotions in any way whatsoever, because they just are. It's not like something is good, something is bad. Sometimes we feel nostalgic, which might feel like a blue emotion, right? Or a little bit mixed with sadness, but we enjoy it, right? Some people want to avoid love because they're afraid of it. So the thing is that there are, and here I'll refer to this other teacher that I really love, another TED speaker, Susan David, also a psychologist. If people are listening, I totally recommend her work. So she says that there are emotions we want more of, and there are emotions which we want less of. And it's not very binary, you know, it's not like everybody wants love and everybody wants joy and nobody wants anger or fear. Sometimes when you've been too deep in shame and sadness or regret, anger might feel like a refreshing emotion, right? Sometimes you might, as I said, love is this very questionable thing. So many people actually want a certain particular type of love, not another type of love. So what I'm trying to say is that we have these two problems with in the humanity, because mostly we haven't been taught. First of all, we judge what we feel. And the second thing is that we don't understand the full spectrum of what we can feel. We say generic word, I feel stressed or I feel unpleasant, but we don't go deep into that. I feel anger, but there are so many different gradations of anger. There's rage, there's irritation, there's frustration. We don't go deep into the spectrum of those feelings, and we simplify it to the point where we don't know how to deal with that thing. And what you said, spiritual bypassing, it's actually a simplified concept of coping mechanisms, which have been known in psychology for 100 years at least, and most of them are extremely unhealthy. Because emotions don't, yes, while they are energy in motion, they do evolve the whole time. But if you don't deal with them, properly deal with them, not try to, because when you try to refocus your emotion or transform it without working on it, transform it into something else, this is actually one of the many coping mechanisms which is going to, backfire. So yeah, there is a lot of ignorance, unfortunately, in the current society of how to deal with that, because there is no cause and there is no, no tradition in teaching us how to deal with that.
It's true. And it keeps us on the surface, on the mask level. And I think it's so important that we're connecting to parents, so that parents, because what I find, and I come from an Asian household, and in the Asian culture, we're not emotionally expressive unless it's just pure rage and anger from the Korean culture. And so it's like, at home you can operate within a very narrow range. If it's like, if you express an emotion that goes beyond the comfort level of the parent, you're going to get punished and you're going to get shut down and you're going to be told to go to your room, and you won't have access to these other ranges in your being. So I think that we need to go to the parents and say to the parents, and educate them on going beyond these ranges, or these very narrow ranges that we've been allowed to operate in.
But you know what's the weirdest thing? Because punishment is certainly there, but the thing is that we'll feel shame. And we'll be the first people to punish ourselves, because you see, I'm doing something which my parents don't like. That means that something is wrong with me. So I feel shame. And the problem with that is that, well, shame obviously is a very bad emotion, but one of the biggest mistakes that humanity does with emotions is that we don't just feel bad or unpleasant emotion. We actually feel bad about feeling that emotion.
Yes.
That's the worst thing, because the emotion itself is actually not as destructive as you're ruminating about how can I feel like that. If you're an enlightened person and you don't like someone, you will be feeling not dislike for someone. You will feel much worse that you feel that emotion.
It's so true. We make ourselves wrong and bad for feeling shame.
Yeah.
And I think shame and guilt and these really low vibration emotions, they all come from conditioning, and they're all learned. We don't come into this world feeling shame about who we are. We learn how to feel shame. So to me, it's like, if you can learn how to feel shame, you can unlearn it and understand that that's a conditioned emotion.
But I would still not, you know what, it's true. But on the other hand, we shouldn't unlearn emotions. Emotions just are. We should learn how to deal with them, because the thing is that if we start being afraid of feeling ashamed, or if we start being afraid of feeling guilt, the moment that emotion kicks in, the whole circle starts again. So every emotion has the reason. I like to compare emotions to the physical body. So there is a condition where a human being cannot feel physical pain. And that condition is really dangerous because that leads to a lot of injury. So emotions have a similar function in our lives. If we feel something which makes us cringe or we don't enjoy it, that makes us pay attention to that area. So shame is not really that bad. It's not bad if you just feel it, but you analyze it, you learn from it, you understand why you felt it, and you try to understand what you have to change about yourself, maybe, or maybe you don't have to change, maybe you have to accept something about yourself. But the thing is that there is nothing wrong about feeling shame. The problem is that when it becomes chronic, the problem becomes when we feel it maybe, where we shouldn't feel it. And the thing with emotions is that whatever you feel is fine. The problem is when we go into patterns over and over and over again. So the shame, when that becomes a pattern, every time I'm not that picture of perfection, I feel shame. And then if you go deep into that, you understand that the picture of perfection is utter nonsense. It's not what you are, and you should stop feeling shame. And then you would stop feeling shame in that particular instance. But if you keep on feeling shame for the same thing over and over again, this is an unhealthy circle. But shame per se is not really a bad thing. It's just a destructive emotion, right. But we don't have to get rid of it.
Well, yes, it's not necessarily about just, trying to cancel it out. I think you have to go in the center of your pain. If you're feeling pain, shame is a painful feeling. You have to go deep into that pain and know, where is this coming from? What's coming up for me? What am I relating this to? Or what am I believing that's limiting for me to experience this? And so I think that's how we emancipate ourselves from those lower vibrations, is just knowing like it's not necessarily true. Just because you feel the shame, it's not true. It's like, take time to be with that, like what's the pain that's coming up, and going deep into, I think that's how we transform our emotions, is by going deep into those emotions. So yes, I think that's how we can get out of this pattern of having, chronic negative emotions that are running in the background, is just by, examining them, really being with them.
There are a lot of methodologies that teach you how to deal with that. And I think that the ability to accept and to be at peace with whatever emotion comes is the step number one, generally, because it's important. So what you were talking about, the spiritual bypassing, it's actually what happens before you accept emotions. So that's already a step closer to resolving it. But there's definitely also the need to be able to step out of that, which is important. But then what I discovered recently, the most important thing is to actually stay open to life. So for example, if or let's say when you experience the same situation, not go back into the pattern of the old emotion, to realize that you cannot step into the same river twice, right? The water goes through all the time, so everything changes. So let's say if your mother triggers irritation when she starts talking on a certain topic, so it happens over and over again, to the point where when that topic arises, the pattern switches on, and you switch on the pattern, and you might go through that emotion. After the conversation, you can forgive the mother, you can forgive yourself, you can let go of the emotion and step out of it and not let it hinder you. But the next step to truly mastering emotions is that the next time when your mother brings up that topic that usually used to bring up irritation in you, you allow that situation to be so much new that that it doesn't trigger any of the old patterns. You recognize that this is a completely new situation, everything is new, and allow yourself to be in that situation as if you're a child for the first time experiencing it, and see what that will bring up, because that might not even be irritation anymore. That might be a completely different emotion. That might be sadness that your mom doesn't understand certain things about you, right? It might be maybe compassion and love and patience. It might be something completely different. So not just going through emotion, but being able not carry your old emotional patterns into your present day and the future. I think this is the true mastery of working with the negative that will happen in our life.
Oh, I like that one. That to me is a reflection of true healing is coming into the same situation, but with a new consciousness.
Yes.
And it's not hitting you in that same way. And so, yeah, I really like that. I really like that. Kristina, I'm curious too, because you've been talking about bringing balance into leadership, gender balance. And can you talk a little bit more about that? And I did have a question from one of our trainees, and she experiences something you had touched upon. When a man says something, when a woman says something, it gets ignored. Nobody can even hear her. But then a man says something, and, oh, it's a great idea, high five. And she wants to know, because she's experienced that quite a bit in corporate, how can you even deal with that? She says, how would you approach that without, sounding like a bitch or getting attacked? Or, how do you interject and create almost this new pattern where you can be heard? That was one of the questions.
Yeah, it's ironic that people ask me to comment on that, because the funny thing is that while I'm definitely very interested in restoring the balance between the genders, I'm also incredibly gender neutral, if I can say so.
Mm-hmm.
And my own experience in work life has never been hindered by the fact that I'm a woman. And as I said, the way I say the woman nowadays is different than it was before. I have always been very much okay being girly woman or feminine woman or whatever. I've never had this as something to be afraid of. And I did my career super early in life. So by 25, I already had the position in the government in Estonia, which most of my Western colleagues had at the age of 40, which I'm now. But so, and in work, because it's, of course, obviously it's my company, I've also not experienced that. So it's a very interesting thing that people keep on asking me this question and I keep on answering it in a slightly unexpected way. Well, first of all, we are the first judges of how we are perceived by the world. And unfortunately, oftentimes, we go into this world not being certain and sure about what do we represent, how do we show up, and being worried. It's the same what we started with. We put on masks because we want to be accepted. So not just that, but we also want to hide that insecurity. So in the male world, which is business, women often feel that they need to man up to actually, work. But there is a lot of power in just being yourself. So I think I touched upon that a little bit. I think our feminine way is slightly different. So men tend to be more competitive with each other. They like to put in that, that gorilla attitude, like, oh, and competing with each other, which is okay. And that's why these whole meeting situations happen, where, who throws the better idea, that's the winner of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But we women are slightly, we women are slightly more prone to keeping the nest intact. Mm-hmm. So what I've noticed, that to actually thrive in this world, whether it's masculine environment or feminine environment, you have to just learn to be yourself. And learning to be yourself has a few aspects. First of all, you have to be honest with yourself and see yourself clearly without deceiving yourself. Honest to the point where you don't give different names to what you actually experience. If I'm a flirtatious, extremely feminine woman, that's what I am. That's my nature. I have to be at peace with that. So I should not try to cover it up with some kind of other names. Or if I'm an emotional person, I have to say the truth. That's what I am, to myself. First of all, to myself. The second aspect is actually accepting yourself for what you are and being at peace with that. Because I have this weird thing, just to illustrate this point. I like to wear on stage things which are mildly questionable. They are kind of appropriate for stage, but also you're wondering, is she just on the border or is it just me? So I would have outfits specifically made for stage with no back whatsoever, because I think that's the last part of my body which I'm absolutely proud of. Or I always wear high heels, or I look extremely, like, I have red hair, for God's sake. I look so I love this. And I've noticed that every time I put on something like that and I go on stage, I wonder, is it too much? So, but I'm the first person who gives myself a label. So I was at an event and I was putting on something and I looked in the mirror and I thought, oh my God, should I even wear that? I'm 41 and I'm dressed so inappropriate. And then I thought to myself, okay, I'll just do that. Maybe I don't even look good in that. And surprisingly, I walked out and I got 3 men compliment me straight away from nothing unpleasant, really nice compliments, like, oh my God, you look so good today, you know, I love this outfit, like proper decent compliments, nothing unpleasant. And I thought to myself, it's interesting, I actually judge myself. I was the one who was putting the label that it is inappropriate, and I came with that label out into the world, and I showed that label to you, the people. And some people who are more perceptive, they actually catch up on that and they behave that way towards me. Whereas if I allow this to be neutral and I go out and I see how does the world take it without me labeling myself, I can see a completely different reaction than what I thought I will hear. So that's the same with us being true to ourselves in any kind of environment, be it girls in the feminine or in the masculine world, or maybe men in the feminine world, or maybe, I don't know, being a beginner among the professionals. Whatever environment you take, you come there with your insecurities, and you often allow or train the people around you to treat you according to those insecurities. So that's why it's important to understand who you truly are, to accept yourself for what you are. And in that truly lies your power. Because when you understand what you are, when you accept that the way you are, you start seeing what the values in your life are. So if for men, standing up for their values, a very natural thing is to go and fight for them, you know, to go and hunt, to go and wage a war, then for us, the women, we have this natural ability to stand in our power and not to go out fighting for our values. Another example, if you take a very hard life decision and you're afraid that your family is going to get upset about that, what do? Do you go out and try to convince your family that they are wrong, try to make them see your point, or you just stay true in your power and allow them to have their journey, and whenever they're ready to hear you, then you convey that message to them? So I think that our feminine power is in understanding what we are, what our values are, what makes us happy, fulfilled, what is important for us. And then just being true to that and stop fighting the wars, stop trying to compare the muscles, because that's not our way. And that's a very complicated answer to that question, but I think that's how it has worked for me. And a lot of powerful leaders don't have really loud voices. Yoda, Dumbledore, look around. Seriously, a lot of them are just have the strong core, and that's what makes them powerful, not their ability to go and wage war for their values.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, it sounded like what you were talking about is self-projection. It's like, if I think this about myself, I'm going to project it back into my space, and then other people respond to me that way. And also the difference, I think, between female power and male power, which I think there's a distinction because men express their power and their energy differently than women do. And I think if women come to know themselves, that's really coming into your own power. And there's no struggle for that anymore. There's no like, okay, now I have to try to speak on top, or I have to, and maybe that comes through your presence by just pausing, or I think it just starts to come naturally when you are in touch with yourself and your inherent power. But I think it's also having the models of energy, or the examples of, leaders that we see, female leaders that we see who are in positions of power, and how they handle their energy, how they express themselves. Because I think what happens is that women model male power.
Yes.
So they're trying to man up, and they're trying to run their power and their energy like men do. And then it becomes almost like a competitive energy that doesn't feel natural. And I think there's a way for a woman to flow her energy that can, kind of go in a synchronous flow more, with male energy that doesn't have to feel like a rub. So
I think any kind of there are two states. You can either be in constant battle and you feel this resistance, right? And there is this state of letting go. And often when we are trying to be not what we are, we resist, because any kind of effort is resistance in essence. So if for men, being the way they are is not resistance, it's actually natural for them, so it's easy. But for us, for women, if we try to grow balls, it is resistance, because it is not true to our nature. So we women have to understand that our true power is actually not in being something what we are not, but in being what we are. It's true for men as well. It's just that men have not had to reverse the roles as much as we women thought that we have to do that. So I believe that for us women, the true answer is actually to become more of us and less of what we are not, because that comes with confidence. And confidence is the most powerful tool. If you see a woman with confidence, no matter how she is, even if she's girly, flirtatious, whatever, if she has confidence in what she does, men will listen. But they will listen to her the way she is. They will not feel that something is off about her, that she's not herself, So it's the confidence that comes with the acceptance of what you truly are. So I would say, if you're resisting, then you're not doing yourself a service. And often if we are a little bit critical about our situations and we ask ourselves honestly, all this fighting, all this trying to man up, all this trying to be not what I am, has it brought me the results that I want? And most likely we keep on fighting. And if we have this much resistance and we keep on repeating the patterns, that maybe it is not the way. And you cannot ask, how do I man up more? Maybe you have to unman as a woman.
Thank you for that, Kristina. I wanted to just check on our time. Is there any closing thoughts you'd like to end with? Or I'm just curious to also know what's on the horizon for you. What are you building and creating for yourself? What's your vision?
Well, I just recently came to a conclusion that there is something I would like to share with the world. So I started, I've been in business for 15 years. I've been helping other authors to convey their teachings and messages. So this stepping up into the shoes of an author has come recently, and that's probably the most important thing right now. I'm trying to speak a lot. I have just recorded my new courses, so we're starting to spread the message. And
what are your new courses? What are your new courses?
So they have been recorded. I do not know when exactly that interview is going to go out. But we are editing them right now and putting them up on all platforms. So I have a 7-day course about how to learn to be happy in 7 days. It's a lighter course. It's a free course, and then I have a deeper course about living by your own rules, which is exactly about finding your way back to yourself. That's a longer one. That's 30 days. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. But I didn't want to interrupt you. Keep going, because you're saying that now you want to come out and share your message. And
so that actually came from so I've been in personal growth for 15 years, helping other teachers to spread their message. And a few years back, one of the teachers has told me, you have to come up with your own course and all that. So I recorded, but I felt that I was an imposter in some way. Yes, I had things to say. I have so much knowledge. I have experience. So I can actually record a pretty beautiful course, and people wouldn't figure out that I don't feel like I'm in the right place. But 3 years ago, I did that. I patted myself on the shoulder and I said I did a good job. But I still felt that it wasn't the right thing. So last year, I have been going through discovering what I truly am. Which is a completely different topic. But when I finally understood that my life is a facade which was built around the vision of a perfect girl, a perfect woman, a perfect mother, a perfect wife, a perfect everything, but it is not the life of me as I am, things started falling to pieces. So it was an interesting and painful journey, but I felt that now I'm ready to become an author. And I know that I'm a beginner and I compare myself with the world's best authors, but I have so much confidence because finally I just understand what I am and what is important for me. And suddenly it's interesting, but you first seeing the ugly side of you, next accepting that ugly side of you and being at peace with that and saying, okay, now I know from where I'm departing, that actually gives you so much confidence and opens you up to so much creativity. It's absolutely unbelievable. So I think my parting message would be just find your path back to yourself, to your in full self, you know, even the shadow parts, even the parts which you've been denying to yourself, even the ones which you're afraid of, just find that path back to yourself and accept and love it. And that is going to change your life. You don't even have to focus on the areas you want to change. Everything will start changing just because you are different.
That's beautiful. Can you just talk the last few minutes about, because you said it's a whole other topic, but when you talked about that journey back to who you are, and you said, I learned what I am and what I'm here for. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that would be interesting.
Sure. So I was born in Soviet Union, which was pretty much a society with a few very simple scenarios for life. So we knew exactly what to do to be happy. We didn't even have entrepreneurship or any kind of form of creativity. Well, there was creativity, space for creativity, but generally you had a path lined up for you by the society, by the government. And even if you failed, you would have been taken to your deathbed in a nice way, you know, comfortably. So I had my path. I was born, I went to school, I studied really well, I got to a really good university, I started a good job, I made my career by the age of 25. And then my life changed a little bit, but I still was on that path of being a perfect person, a perfect woman. I call it being a Hermione in a way, you know, straight A students throughout your life. So I carried this perfectionism throughout my life. Although things changed, but I still managed to get married well, start a business, have a mission, have 2 children. You know, statistically, we are supposed to have 2 children not to decline as a society. I did everything by the book. By the age of 40, I had such a perfect, beautiful life that a lot of people felt that I was a role model for them in many ways. But what I felt wasn't exactly that. So I would catch myself thinking something which I thought, oh no, that's not right. I shouldn't feel like that. And that same thing, you know, the fuse disappeared. Like when I was planning my life, all I could think was a little more, a little better, a little bigger of everything that I have right now. So that didn't motivate. And then those situations started happening. Like I would go to work and I wouldn't feel guilty as a mother, or I would be introduced to someone as my highly successful husband's wife and feel like, no, but that's not what I am. It's just one of the roles I have, but I'm so much more. And I would judge myself. Oh no, I shouldn't feel like that. This is not how I'm supposed to feel. I should be proud. You know, I should be feeling this. So when I started shooting myself about my emotions, about my thoughts, I have this weird computer in my head. I started asking myself, why do I feel like that? What does it say? What does it mean? Where does it come from? And I started digging. And then I started uncovering things about myself which I did not know existed, or I covered up. I didn't want to acknowledge. So last year I was 40. And at one point, I remember that moment where I was sitting in the bathroom, having a complete breakdown, feeling absolutely bad about having a breakdown because I'm that perfect person with a perfect life. Why am I having a breakdown? What is wrong? And I suddenly realized that at my 40, with my perfect life, I can't even afford to show people in my life, my family, that I'm breaking down, that I'm not feeling happy, because this is inappropriate. This is wrong. This is not perfect, you know, I should not be broken. So I realized that I lived to 40 to close myself in the bathroom to allow myself to be me. So from that process, I started digging and undigging and discovering and coming to peace with things which don't fit the perfect scenario, because, you know, it's not good for a woman to value work, for example, more than their family, or, you know, it's not good for a woman who is married to actually want to be seen as an individual and not as part of a family unit. There are so many things which we think that we shouldn't be, and that picture of perfectionism and me were different things. So then I had this whole path of accepting myself for what I am, learning to deal with that, loving myself for what I am. And as I said, I did not try to solve any problem in my life. My life was perfect. But when I rediscovered myself and I found out that I wasn't the person that I thought for 40 years that I was, that I tried to the world to see, the facade that I had built around that perfection started falling off. It just didn't hold anymore. So my life broke into pieces. So many things broke up. So many things. At some point, I felt everything that could go wrong went wrong. But, and it was painful. But the plus side of that was that I really appreciated what I had become. I really felt so much more at peace with what I was. And it was so much easier, although I didn't know where my life will take me because it started being so shaky after being so perfect. This uncertainty was worth the peace that I had in me, that I could just stop pretending. I could just tell my truth and be certain in it and be okay with that and be okay with the fact that the world might not accept my truth. So that was the journey, which...
And how was it like when with your family? How did they respond? Like, how were you received? I mean, did you feel met? And
well, there is one concept which I also learned along the way, because as you go through experiences, if you're doing that consciously and you allow those experiences to teach you something, universe will send you the right ideas. So one of the ideas which I learned last year is that everybody has the right to their journey. The same way as I have the right to my journey, and I have the right to that journey not being perfect by the society standards. I have the right to my journey even if it doesn't correspond to the truths of the people in my life. I have that right. The same way the people in my life have the right to their journey. So some of the decisions that I've taken over the past year have really stressed people in my team, at work, my family, my parents. Just recently, just this weekend, I had a hard conversation with my family where they questioned one of my decisions. And I had this feeling that I have to explain it to them because I care about them and they're worried beyond the reason. But I also understood that they were not ready for that and they were going through their journey. So my task was to allow them their path. And whenever they're ready to hear, open up to explain what my choice meant for me. So that whole idea that the people in your life have the right to experience what they experience. And your task is actually to just be there for them. That was a very supportive idea throughout this turbulent phase, because obviously if you change, if your life changes, people around you will tell you, oh, but you are hurting me. There will be people who will come and say, oh, you'll hurt people in your life. But the truth is that, no, you won't. They might not accept your choice for some time. They'll come to peace with that. They will. But what you're hurting them with, if you are not being truly you, if you're not being happy, if you're not being fulfilled, if you're suffering through your own life, and we could go deeper into that. The thing is that if we are not true to ourselves, we'll keep on bottling those emotions which come to us over and over again. We won't deal with them. They'll explode eventually. Or we'll build all those walls and we'll stop feeling and we'll be dead before we are dead. So there are so many consequences of that which we don't realize. And people in your life feel that. Let's say if husband and wife don't love each other, they might want to keep the marriage because of the children, but the children suffer more from that marriage than from them taking the courage to break it up. So it's the same about everything in our life. We sometimes have to take the courage to show up as we are and to allow the people, the closest people, the people that we love, to get a little bit up, maybe confronted by that, or maybe challenged or not comfortable with what you decide, or even feel pain and worry. And just allow them that feeling and be there for them, but still stay true to what is important to you, to your values. So that's a short answer.
That's very rich material. And I have to say, Kristina, I mean, I just honor you in your path. I think that what you're talking about right here, this is the unconscious fear and block that a lot of people have in getting in touch with their true self, is just, I think, the stress and the repercussion of things falling apart and becoming uncertain and facing rejection or abandonment from our loved ones,
or hurting them
inadvertently because we're making a positive decision for ourselves that seems like we're going against our loved ones, when it's not really that way, but it can feel that way, and they can experience it that way because we're paying attention. And I think it's so important what you said, the fuse. You have to be connected to the fuse, the energy, even the confidence. When you talk about all of that, to me, that's spirit. That's like inspired action. You know, your desire is bubbling up inside of you and moving you to, you know, what you really want. You know, you could feel when there's energy behind it, and you could feel when you're just going through the motions and just mechanically, automatically doing what you're supposed to do. And so I think that this material is so rich. I loved hearing about your story because you're right. I mean, I think when I even saw some of your videos, I thought, wow, you have this perfect life. You got a great setup. You know, you look fabulous and, you know, and gorgeous. And it's like, and just that we all have, you know, we're all going through this process of awakening and finding ourselves. And I think it'll be really refreshing for people to hear your story, like really coming from you. I think it's powerful. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And I have a feeling like a lot of your rich teachings are going to come from this place. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Joining today. It's lovely. Any last closing words that you want to say?
I'll say it short. There's no such thing as too much love for yourself. And to expand on that, we are sometimes afraid to love ourselves because we think that this is selfishness or egocentric. But the egocentric and the selfishness is the void in us. That's when we start sucking up love from outside, sucking up the signs that, you know, I'm appreciated and loved. So there is no such thing as too much love for yourself, because only when you're completely filled with love, that's when you're ready to spill it over.
Amen to that. Thank you, Kristina.